Hello, everybody, and welcome to part 25 or so of my Fire Emblem 6 hard mode chapter guide. Today, we're going to be looking at the final Ilia chapter and the guidance chapter for Ilia, and that is chapter 20X. I believe it's called like the Frozen Spear or something along those lines. The Spear of Ice, that's the name of the chapter. This chapter is really sort of interesting because the Sakai guidance chapter is very like specific to Sakai, and it's also arguably the worst chapter in the entire game. This chapter is not, I guess it's specific to Ilia, but this chapter is very straightforward and honestly really easy. So there's not a lot to say here. You're gonna start, as you can see, with Roy in the very bottom, and basically you just break through walls and eventually wind up at the boss. Like I said, there's honestly not a ton to say here because you can, number one, you can take this really slowly because you can decide when to break through walls. Number two, I actually kind of remember this being a Fog of War chapter, but it's not even a Fog of War chapter. So it's not even like you break open walls and then who knows what's on the other side, right? You know exactly what you're getting into. There are the two druids in the middle have Sleep and Berserk, which is kind of annoying, but as long as you bring Restore, obviously you don't have to worry too much about them. The boss is also just a general, so pretty easy, especially for magic users. Yeah, this chapter, as I said, is pretty darn straightforward. And yeah, so we'll get right into the chapter. There's not going to be a lot of preps or anything, and we'll talk about it a little bit more. Okay, so here you can see the actual chapter itself, and we can look at some of the units. So you have like obviously some pretty strong units at this stage. You know, almost 70 health warriors. But again, you can isolate them pretty easily, and there's not a ton to do. It's funny actually that this sniper has these low of stats, and then this warrior has this high of stats. But I guess it is a sniper. Again, this guy has, I believe, Berserk, and this guy has Sleep. Along with Physic, which can be a little bit annoying because these warriors have a lot of health, but their defense is not high, so I wouldn't worry too much about that. This guy does have a 26 attack killing edge with 22 speed, which honestly isn't even that much. And then, as I said, the boss is pretty straightforward. I mean, 17 res is kind of nice, but there's no like other magic users. Oh, you do actually start a little bit spread out. I did mention this at the top, which can be a little bit annoying. My recommendation, basically, I would say this is a decent like general rule, and there's not much to talk about here, so I guess I'll talk about it here. If the game spreads you out like this, you don't like have to actually like perform the chapter in spread out teams. So what I mean by that is like just because these units are up here does not mean that you have to use just these three units to like break in from here. You can absolutely have these units just go down here, break this wall, same thing on this side, and then have everybody take the middle. Now you don't have to do this, but just know that like most of the time, and in this case, for example, I think it's a lot easier to just kind of have your teams come together. There's no reason to risk three units on their own when you can just have your entire army come together. And this will be for the Sakai Guidance Chapter 2. You'll have split teams. So yeah, honestly, like I said, there's not much to worry about. We want Restore, which I think actually my Restores are becoming very dismal at the moment because I think I only have the one left. Yeah, so that's a little bit scary for me. Obviously, you should probably have more Restores at this point. But and hopefully you do. But yeah, no, you can pretty much bring whoever you want, just bring your strongest units, and yeah, I probably won't do much with this chapter. I'll probably just skip to the end, because as I said, mostly just break down these walls and slowly make your way to the boss. Okay, so one of the things that I did just want to mention here is, as I said, my restore uses are actually pretty low. I actually generally never have this problem, so I'm not really sure why I have less restore uses than I usually do, but buying like one extra restore when you have the opportunity is a decent idea. But just know that like runs aren't going to be perfect. This run, even where I'm like resetting and stuff, it's not going to be perfect. So in this case, we do have Hammern, which I don't usually like. I don't have like a dedicated Hammern use in the game. But it is a decent use on the restore. I could have waited until the restore was on a 1 and then do it. But restore is really important, so it's not a bad use for Hammern. And yeah, just be aware that that can be a really useful tool if you do wind up running out of something like that. Because the range, sleep doesn't matter as much, but the range of Berserk is really, really high. For example, I had to actually back up ability here, so we're going to have to kind of bait that out to start off this chapter. So yeah, just be aware of how important restore is. Okay, so this is pretty much the end of the chapter at this stage. I mentioned that the boss is, I mean, he's pretty bulky, but again, not too difficult to deal with. Our Lu dealt a little bit of damage. I think it was like 6 times 2, and then as you can see, our Melody does decent. We can see if maybe we can get a crit here. But yeah, as I said, I skipped most of this chapter. There are no like reinforcements or anything like that. Again, as long as you have the restores to kind of get through the status devs, there isn't a lot of of interesting stuff going on here. It's pretty darn straightforward as far as the chapter is concerned. Okay, so I'm gonna kill this guy with 4 blaze, and I just want to mention the divine weapons and sort of how you should be using them. I think I mentioned before that you need to get them all, and then you still need to have them all in your possession, which means that if a unit dies with them on their person, you lose them, or if you use up all their uses. Now, as I said before, we do have the hammer, and I'm pretty sure you can hammer in the divine weapons. I'd be surprised if you couldn't. So you always have that in your back pocket. You do want, so they are really powerful, obviously, as we saw there. You do want a decent amount of uses for the end game, because the final, I guess not technically the final chapter, but essentially the final chapter, you just fight a ton of Manicheets, and you just want to be spamming the divine weapons at that stage. So you don't want to like use up all your divine weapons, but I wouldn't be too worried about using them here and there, if need be. And I believe we get the divine spear here, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, or lance, I guess, the multi. So yeah, so that was the guidance chapter. At this stage, as I said, we are going to be going back and doing the Sakai route split, so we'll be talking about those chapters, and then when we're done, we'll do the chapter after this. So basically, we just have, other than those Sakai chapters, the Murdoch chapter, and then the Zephyl chapter, and then we have a couple of endgame chapters, but that's it. So we're getting pretty close to the end here. Yeah, so as always, I hope everybody enjoyed, and I will see you next time when we do Sakai.